This evening's Dharma talk is titled Benevolent Authority. So authority that is respectful, is kind, is helpful, is not particularly interfering. Without permission. So it's some of you have heard me say the three things that I refer to is to cooperate, communicate, cooperate, collaborate. So communicate, there has to be strong communication. There's no actual cooperation, collaboration. So communicate, which is mostly receiving. So we need to have some kind of guidance, some kind of authority. But how that arises through different times and different places in history has been everything from an actual benevolent or kind figure. Might have been your mom, might have been your father, or possibly a teacher. Going back in history, there are all kinds of extremes in both directions. Not so benevolent, more tyrannical, oligarchs, dictators. I believe Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche once responded to someone's question. I have to paraphrase because I don't know exactly what transpired there, but was asked about what would be a good way of governing that would be workable. And I think he said something like a benevolent dictator. That might be a little bit too strong. And then my Zen master, Kobun Roshi, said his comment on authority was, get your own authority. So this idea of teacher-student or guru and chila, or however you want to characterize it, teacher-student, so on. Someone teaching, someone learning, changes. The concepts for that are all over the place, and there's all kinds of interpretations and ideas about it. The way I relate to this is I say, you don't have to obey me. I'm not going to order you around and tell you what to do, particularly. I'm not a guru in the traditional sense. I leave it up to you, especially with our complicated society. It's not like it was in even 100 years ago, which was much more accessible conceptually to see all the variety. And also we don't have a 700-800 year tradition of Buddhism going back 2,500 years. We've got a little over 100 years, I think. Started around the turn of the previous century, when the first teachers came to this country from Buddhist teachers. Can't remember the guy's name right now. But I would say rather, give me the benefit of the doubt. Don't believe what I'm saying. Don't turn away or disbelieve it. But you can consider it. And what do I say over and over again to anyone who will listen or wants to listen is train your mind. And simply put, the way I recommend that you do that is to sit down and watch the way in which your mind is chaotic or untrained or grasping or fighting or shutting down or opening up and shutting down again, grasping at this, grasping at that, fighting with this, fighting with that. Observe that. conventionally, the mundane path in its different teachings or guidance structures are mundane. They're about fixing it, repairing it, because something's broken, something isn't right, something needs to be repaired or addressed in a way to make it not be so chaotic, so problematic. And that can be successful. It's successful enough that people charge a fee to do that. And it's also successful enough that people actually feel better going through psychotherapy or other kinds of therapy, psychoanalysis. So it's not that going other directions, more mundane directions of even taking medications. Not saying that won't change things, but the issue I have with all of that, at the same time, I'm happy that it helps people, because I wouldn't talk someone out of that. I don't really talk anybody out of anything. But I would say that it's not quite complete, because it is ignoring the fundamental nature of what we call reality, which the Buddha and others have pointed out as dependent origination, or there are no separate things, beings, situations, objects, thoughts, emotions, memories. Nothing is independent of everything else. Everything is dependently arisen. So anything that looks like a being, a personality, an identity, a singularity, is real from the point of relationship. It's relatively real, because here it is. It's in space. It's a helicopter. It's a person. It's a rabbit. It's your own face in the mirror. It's relatively there, but ultimately, the ultimacy of the situation is missed or covered up by what? I like this. I don't like that. This is good. This is working, but this over here is not working. So we even do it with meditation practice. The Vidyadhara Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche addressed that when he first got to this country. And the book, of course, is probably his third book. Cutting Through Spiritual Materialism. The spiritual practice of using spiritual techniques to get somewhere, even to enlightenment or awakening. Not exactly wrong, just incomplete. So the way it appears over here to me is that everyone is going to need a little bit different, a little bit different kind of authority or someone or some situation where you're being told, no, don't do this, do this. But if it's done as some kind of in a military fashion, where there are ranks, I happen to know because I was in something that was extremely controlled by the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the U.S. Marine Corps, which is there's only obey or disobey. Those are your two choices. Question nothing. Question no authority unless you're invited. That might happen occasionally. And it's not that won't accomplish something. It will accomplish really powerful control over a lot of people, over a country, over a whole institution, maybe countless numbers of people, because of the observing what's called the chain of command. The general right on down to the private first class, the corporal, the lance corporal, the sergeant, the staff sergeant, and on up through the sergeant major to all of the officers, commissioned officers. So the goal there is to control a bunch of people and literally fight wars. And we as a society, as a culture, we affirm that. We feel like that this is necessary. It's necessary to have an Army, a Marine Corps, a Navy, Coast Guard, and so on, necessary to have police. And I'm not saying it's not, relatively speaking, where we're at, because of dependent origination, because of the very nature that, or the singularity of that we would find there is in terms of the chain of command, in terms of the boss. We see how well that works. It's not that it doesn't work to some extent, of course. It even happens in monasteries, and it happens in the Tibetan lineages are very hierarchical. It even says in the Tibetan tradition, whatever the guru says, that I will do, unquestioningly. That might have been necessary a few hundred years ago. Maybe necessary now, I don't know, but it doesn't look like it over here. It looks to me like a better way would be to include the person you're endeavoring to help. Benevolent authority. Help them, not control them, and not help them based on what you think they need. This is just utter ignorance, just to actually ignore the suffering of others based on what you think is happening to them. This happens, there are teachers, and I've met a few, who actually think they know what's good for other people. You could say I might be in that same category because I say, I think it might be a good idea if you train your mind. I don't say you have to do it this way, but you might want to find a way to train your mind to see clearly so you don't have any more doubts about what is happening. When I say doubts, we could talk about that more. If you have questions about it, we can talk about this whole topic. Shut up.
I had a question about, you brought up like a monastery situation and with the officers here. I've recently heard it brought up that we're not to report to these other people, but our line of communication is with them. So what is authority in terms of communication?
Situational. Situational. The structure, including the abbot or including the head of the monastery, it's situational. If that person is closed off in that they have some kind of authority over others, this is a misunderstanding, and it's a big one, and it's all over the world, the politics, right and wrong, correct and incorrect. And so it's situational. This doesn't mean that you ignore the structure that's there, but it means that you ignore that you use the structure until something starts to tip another way, and then you look at it closely. You look at the structure rather than say, well, I have this, I'm the Eno, so I'm the one who should just tell everybody what to do in the Zendo. And this, I know I've been in places where where it's really an intense controlling situation, about controlling. And the justification would be that a teacher might say, well, you need to have that because you need the discipline. Well, that's a misunderstanding of discipline. I probably have, probably most people who talk about this or teach this would disagree with me. It's very possible that most Buddhist teachers would disagree with me. More, please help me.
I'm curious about discipline, and how is it that really macho, rigid thing comes up when we think of discipline instead of
it's just our culture. I thought about it too. I think about it. Just the way I was treated for 4 years in the military. That's how it looked. I guess that's just the way you do things. And that's the way I was taught by my stepfather. Those in charge and those that do what they're told, that kind of authority. That's why I'm even using this topic. The benevolent means that the one who has that position of being whatever, the teacher or the Sukansu or the Shuso or the Eno or any other roles, the first sergeant, the sergeant major, the PFC. That those aren't, that doesn't function that way in the military, but it could. You could actually have a rank where it would put you in a situation if there's no communication, if the communication is not working, the cooperation is not working, and then the collaboration, of course, can't work, then somebody may need to say, open that door and close that one. Or someone may need to say that, but it needs to be situational, not my authority. I'm sure those of you who've been students of mine for any length of time notice that sometimes I tell you what to do, and other times I don't at all. I listen to what you're going to do. More? Go ahead. Any other questions? I can talk more. We can.
Sokuzan,
Go ahead, please.
you talked a little bit about discipline in its form of macho-ness.
Yes.
What is a discipline that is benevolent or respectful?
Observe the form. Don't obey it. Observe. Observe the form. And if you are really observing the form and you are watching, because the forms are never static. Anytime they're made static or made solidified, that's because somebody's afraid of losing control. Or maybe somebody's afraid if they're going to miss enlightenment if they're not really rigid with their practices. It's just a big misunderstanding. It's not right and wrong or just extra. It's really understanding what those forms are in terms of their guidelines. You observe them. There are times when you may be able to align yourself in such a way that from all appearances, you're doing exactly what the form is saying. But because you're operating out of the situation, because you're using your awareness and because you are respectful of anything that is moving in the form that appears to be static, you're respectful of that. That way you work with what is happening. It's called cooperation. But the first part of it is communication, which means just receive. Communication is not production. It's not talking. I'm not saying that isn't a part of it, but it's not a very large part of it. Go ahead.
You often talk about responsibility as the ability to respond.
Yes.
Is there still something to a culpability or a need to take initiative associated with responsibility?
There could be, but it's situational rather than, well, I've got to do it this way. Anytime you are saying to that, well, I have to do this. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but you could look at it for a little while. It's called patience. Now, if the ship is sinking and you're not sure which lifeboat to use, that might be different. It might be a different kind of confusion. But quite often we have confusion when we really have more time to look at that situation and see if there isn't some aspect of it that makes it choiceless. You need to go this way. And there might not be a because there. Sometimes we look for, why am I doing this? Because sometimes we need to do things without the support of some kind of reason why we did it, so that we can tell others, this is why I did this. It's because this. Well, at least you smiled. I don't know if that meant you understood what I said, because I didn't understand what I said. Trying to get that understanding from you. Questions? Yes, Junshu.
Question from Benjamin Swartout, Florida. When
Benjamin.
in the process of realizing no separation and it feels internally like one aspect has more power and the second willingly says, okay, you win. I love you. Go ahead. Have your way with me.
I'm not sure what the question is there. It sounds like kind of an opera. If you can, I'm happy to address the question, but I'm very simple-minded and not particularly good at taking what you're saying and convert it into what you mean. So tell me what you mean. What's the question? Give it to me directly. You're not gonna?
Not yet.
Sokuzan bowing. I was wondering if you could say what benevolence and authority are separate. Like, what is benevolence and what is authority?
So starting with benevolence, I didn't look up the word. Maybe I'm just having an assumption about what it means. Being kind, being caring, being supportive, being flexible, being generous with a parent other, with someone or something, but also to yourself. Instead of locking down and giving yourself a hard time with your negative emotions and feelings, you might give yourself a little bit of space. As a Trungpa would say, make friends with yourself. You can't do that unless you deal with the negativity, unless you have kind of a benevolent and kind attitude towards that. It's going to be very difficult to be kind and benevolent to somebody who's across the room yelling at you and accusing you of things and trying to, you could say, trying to trigger your aggression so they can feel validated, because now they see that you're upset. What was the other part?
What is the benevolence, or how does the benevolence change the authority when we think of authority?
Yeah, so the authority part is whoever is the author, whoever is the person who's creating or instructing or manipulating, you could say manipulating or moving the forms to go from here to there, to there, to there, setting up standards in order to fundamentally help others, not setting up standards so that you eventually get control of them and they obey your orders or worship you or whatever.
What does it mean to hold a form while losing, to lose?
So when we talk about holding the form, or we're talking about aligning yourself with a particular guideline and endeavoring to be with that, and then to lose. And so the losing part would be how you felt about that.
Well, I think about any one of the functionaries here, you know, Shodo Kozan, we all have responsibilities. So there's a form you've asked us to hold, and there's people that are trying to observe those forms. And so when some sort of resistance comes up, what does it mean to lose to the situation in the context of being responsible to a form?
Yeah, just watch the feeling of loss. Just this is where the awareness just includes, just watch that move. Nothing lasts, but it tends to persist if we struggle with it, or if we fight with it, if we shut down on it, aggression, or if we justify it or validate it or explain it, passion, or if we just close off or distract ourselves, then whatever that is tends to continue to rotate or move around in some fashion. It tends to have more energy. But if you do nothing with it, then it gets its energy from the apparent separation we call duality, from the otherness.
How do we support ourselves or those around us while being confused about what support is, or even being confused about what the forms are?
Yeah, that's awareness. I don't think you could do it any other way with any kind of genuineness or sincerity, other than to whatever arises in your mind stream and which is what you're asking about, is it's just forms. They're just forms, but we can't go in and kind of depersonalize them and make them not feel so personal. We have to actually see that the very apparent personhood of those is also a form, and it is dependently arisen. So there's no way to stop the subjectivity that's grasping after something else or wants success, or there's no way to stop that, but you can look at it, you can observe it. This is what the sitting practice of meditation is about, is to just watch the movement, so that when you're in what we commonly call post-meditation or up off the cushion, that you are more clear about the movement of forms coming and going.
What is authority, or what is the authority of not knowing? How does not knowing show up as an authority?
Again, please.
How does not knowing, or that confusion, how does that show up as authority?
Because depersonalized, the not knowing is spacious. It's just open space. So one is there, you don't know, but then the situation that's rising there has its own maybe temporary, or apparent personhood, you relate to that. It means that someone is shrinking down into someone who doesn't like, or someone else who wants something else. And if you are being, if you're unexplored or unseen difficulties, if you're not aware of your own negativity, your own hidden anger or whatever it may be, and that gets triggered out here, then you actually enter into some kind of a conflict, or you might not say anything, but you would feel it. And so then you don't have the clarity that you need to fundamentally, but be benevolent, be kind to them. If someone is going through a great deal of stress and anxiety, and because of you're triggering them, then they begin to come back and accuse you of what you're doing to them, and you get triggered because of your dynamic has not been seen. So then, if you were, then it means warfare. But if what happens is what you just talked about, if you actually feel helpless from the point of view of relative situation, you actually feel like you can't help them, then that spaciousness is benevolent.
How do you work to depersonalize the not knowing?
You see how much you personalize it. You can't depersonalize it, because then we're back into some kind of a materialistic approach to trying to fix something that's broken. So you just see the main situation, the main misunderstanding is thinking there is someone, a solid being called me, and a solid other called you or that. Everywhere you look, you don't see any, there is nothing else anywhere. If you think there is, then there's warfare. More?
These situations that, if I get confused, or if I personalize not knowing, they don't happen on the cushion. They happen when I'm interacting or moving. So how do we practice? How do you practice?
On the cushion.
How do you need to be intentional about practicing on your?
What you're doing on the cushion is you're just sharpening your awareness, so to speak, just a way of talking about it. Sit down, hold still, watch the movement. And you're training yourself to watch what comes, watch what goes, without any addition, subtraction, or division. Nothing extra. Whatever happens it's like you're not seeing anything at all, because you don't have there's no addition to it of what it is. There's no addition to it or subtraction from it for what it shouldn't be. No judgment and no distraction. So it's just that movement. And in that way, we are training our minds to be, you could say, kind of depersonalize things, so that when you get off the cushion, you enter in with into your everyday, your post-meditation, your everyday life, your job, your family. You're able, more likely able to see things come and go, the energy of others, the agreements, the disagreements, the obstructions, the validations, the dismissals, and all of those. You're able to see those as just energy. I don't mean you have some kind of psychological conclusion. Oh, that's just energy. I don't mean that. That's thinking about this instead of the thinking process is necessary, but it needs to take a back seat to the awareness. We need to lead with our awareness. And if you lead with your awareness, there's not enough oxygen in there for ego. The kind of oxygen that ego needs is based on opposition, on success, on failure, on the 8 worldly dharmas. And so it has to be done, my understanding, I'm not saying there might not be a better way, but my understanding, it has to be done with awareness, with the awareness. We have to train our awareness to see deeply into the wall, into the floor, into the back of our hand, into other people's eyes, as the other people are agreeing with us maybe, or disagreeing with us, or go ahead.
Sometimes that triggering can happen, and it kind of just progresses for long periods of time. So if you still have to function, if I still have to go to book study or do a Dharma talk or have a meeting, can you function without bleeding with the solidification that's been building?
Maybe not. Maybe not. Another thing I could say is that's the only way you can do it. It isn't like you can clean up your act and then be a wonderful angel. You have to do it with the negativity. Otherwise, That's why it doesn't. That's why the relative path of materialism or spiritual materialism doesn't really work, because it's temporary. You can work on that for a while and get to be relatively better, maybe less disagreeable, or smile a lot more or whatever. But you haven't looked at the fundamental issue, which is duality. Believe that there's someone who can get better, someone who can attain enlightenment, some being, some personhood. Choo-choo.
Looks like I read Benjamin's question too soon.
Oh,
Um,
Benjamin,
so I'm gonna read the whole thing again.
go ahead.
When in the process of realizing no separation, and it feels internally like one aspect has more power, and the second willingly says, okay, you win. And then you see there is a larger, great perfection orchestrating the whole event. Is the larger one the authority?
Read that again. Maybe he should be teaching this. What is it again? I'll try to respond as clearly as I can.
When in the process of realizing no separation,
Okay, stop. Now go on.
and it feels internally like one aspect has more power, and the second willingly says, okay, you win. And then you see there is a larger, great perfection orchestrating the whole event. Is the larger one the authority?
No, that's delusion. That is delusion. What was his name? Andrew Lloyd Webber? Benjamin. So that's delusion. And how do I know that's delusion? I don't really know, but the way it's expressed, it's coming out of something else, some kind of understanding about this. So if you've actually abandoned, if you want to express yourself, you need to express yourself about what it is without turning it into some interpretation of what it is. You might say to me, well, aren't you doing that? Maybe, maybe not. So less is better. The elaboration that you're going through there has a relative accuracy to it. And I'm following you. I'm tracking what you're saying. I'm just saying that just keep it very simple. Come back to square one, sit down, face the wall, and continue. You're leaving the awareness too quickly in terms of the interpretation using concepts. It has some accuracy to it, of course, but it's a misunderstanding if we continue to search for it in that way. Leave those tools at home. When I say leave them at home, leave them in the other room. Sit down, face the wall. Excuse me, no tools, just receive. Most profound form of generosity is to give everything your attention. How do you do that? You train by facing a wall where nothing's happening, in a room that's fairly quiet, without too much racket, unless it's a cat or something. Those are all right. And then whatever shows up, just watch it. And if you add something to it about what it is, like it looks like you're doing, then just watch that. It's just the movement, Don't believe the movement, don't disbelieve the movement, and don't ignore it. And do a lot of it. Do it for 20, 30 years. This is not a quick, as they say, quick fix, not even a fix. And whatever it is, it's probably not spelled with an X. Choo-choo.
You said we need some kind of guidance or authority.
Yes.
Why?
Well, if I use myself as an example, before I met the Vidyadhara Trungpa Rinpoche many years ago, the direction I was going was probably to either be one of the smartest people I'd ever known. I was working on that. Or kill myself because I was the most evil person I'd ever met, and I didn't deserve to live because of the thoughts that were going through my mind stream. And when I was bouncing around in that particular arena of narcissism and self-centeredness, I happened to stumble into Chogyam Trungpa. And so what am I saying? I'm not saying you couldn't do this by yourself, but it's unlikely. You could be really, there are people who are really, really intelligent who manage to not have to deal with the self-hatred that I had, are really intelligent that are able to live and be respectful and even have a life that where they're helping people, basically. It's just that it's, sometimes when we help people, we're actually adding to their confusion rather than fundamentally helping them. So as I said earlier, the mundane path is fine, but death comes without warning, and this won't help you when death comes. Mundane path will help you right up to the death's door, but then what are you going to do then? Because who you are does not stop just because the body-mind complex goes back into the elements from which it came.
Shogabang, when you talk about meeting Trungpa,
Yes.
what was the authority in that example?
For me,
Yes.
I needed help, and I had to have somebody that I could trust. I'd already talked to a psychiatrist. I looked at that time, there weren't 300 or 400 kinds of therapies, but there were a few dozen. And I looked into lots of them, trying to understand how can I work with this insanity that I'm dealing with? One of them was Arthur Janoff's primal therapy, or the Center for Feeling Therapy in California. Just this one of them. And then there's all the other ones. I'm okay, you're okay. And what else is there back there? Back in the 60s and 70s. So when I met him, it was the first time I had met someone that was not trying to manipulate me, that had no particular advice for me except one thing: meditate. And I kept looking for some kind of some aspect. And I had a few face-to-face interviews with him, which if I hadn't had those, it might have been more difficult. But to meet him face-to-face and ask him pointed questions that I kind of expected I would get a different kind of answer. I never got anything from him except exactly what I needed. That was the confidence to keep going. And I'd say he gave me the confidence. He just pointed out that this is something I could do. And even though I tried to scare him by what I was going through, he wasn't frightened at all by it. And so I think at the time, I don't remember exactly how it went, but I think, well, if he's not frightened of this, maybe I can do this. So that's when I began working on it. That was 46, 47, I don't know, many years ago. Junchu.
Question from Julian Wazana. Why is the delusion so convincing? Perhaps to give free will a chance and to create a need for discipline? Is this thought beyond our domain?
That's too complicated. I can't respond to that. Simplify it. Just give me a simple question and I'll respond to it. But that's a conversation. I don't have conversations other than within you occasionally. Conversations that we're just philosophizing about stuff. Ask me a direct question. I'll be as direct with you as I can.
A question from Ben Van Blarken. Would a benevolent authority encourage others to be mischievous?
Using your definition, sure. Using mischievous, yeah, that's probably not going to encourage others to murder people at their behest, but mischievous could be okay. most of the people I know are already pretty mischievous without my help. You know,
What is the responsibility of someone who is working with a benevolent authority?
what's the responsibility of that person? And it's kind of abstract. It would depend on, you know, a person who's their student or
Maybe more, it feels like in the face of a benevolent authority that's somehow different from, well, like you were describing the Marine Corps.
that kind of authority is about controlling others to come up with certain kinds of ends, which might be even as my father, who was killed in World War II, he was 26 years old. He didn't want to go, but at that time there wasn't any other thing you could do besides go or get locked up. So he went and he was killed. And so he obeyed, no choice, have a choice to do that. I think now they don't have a obligatory draft, so you don't have to go. But they pay you so much money that now they pay people to do it. Or shame you into it. Go ahead.
Maybe it's more a question of how to recognize a benevolent authority.
Don't do anything unless you have to. It's just another way of saying be patient. You don't have to look for a teacher, or you don't have to look for a sangha. You don't have to look for anything. But if you're suffering, you're probably going to look around for something. If you're having difficulty, if things are really frustrating, or if you're feeling like you're a danger to yourself or you're a danger to others, this is where I was at. So I was looking everywhere. Go ahead.
Would you characterize Chogyam Trungpa as a benevolent authority?
I think situationally, yes. But I don't know what kind of karma he was dealing with. But it was some a powerful combination of positive and negative energy. I think he probably did the best that he could. But of course, there's plenty of room to criticize him. He drank. He was, sometimes that's justified by saying it's the crazy wisdom form of the Buddhas 3 times, or so. I don't know. I have no idea about that. I know that I can see where it could function as a pretty outlandish. The Bodhisattva, someone who's endeavoring to be with all things, can't be separate from the very negativity that he, she, or they are trying to deal with. You can't be some kind of a wonderful saint who's helping the poor, crazy people. You have to be the craziness you're working with. It's like I say to people all the time, you want to work with your negativity, your passion, aggression, and ignorance, don't miss your life. Be the negativity you're trying to get rid of. It takes a lot of guts to do that, because what if the negativity gets a hold of you and you start murdering people? I would say stop smoking weed. It's a joke, by the way. Do whatever you want. So you have to work. If you're going to work with if you're going to save all beings, you're going to have to work with their negativity. You have to be with them, be one of them. And it's going to be difficult to do that if you're stuck on an identity that needs to be right, or can't be wrong, or doesn't want to look bad in front of others. Pride. Or shame. Those polarities have got us. And it's not that they've got us, it's just that that's what perpetuates the self-centeredness, looking for a way out. And the only way out is in. Go in. Go in. Do that. Sit down, hold still, face the wall. Find out who you are. Don't miss it. Not easy to do that. Further questions? Let's have some hard questions now. Do anybody hard questions? Stop scowling at me. Oh, go ahead, scowl. Any further questions or we end?
Bill Bowing.
Go ahead, Bill.
I have a question that's been sort of noodling around in there for a long time, and I think this may be a good time to ask it.
Okay.
It seems like Trungpa Rinpoche intentionally tried to bring Buddhism into a culture that was, you might say, foreign to it. And you seem to be going back a little bit to the trappings, at least, of a culture from which it originated, but you also seem to be trying to adapt it to our culture. So we have a different notion of authority. Can you say something about how that noodled around in your head to come to where you've come?
That's, got any noodles?
Bowing.
Noodles.
Thank you.
So I'm not trying to, I'm not being disrespectful if I can help it. I'm just saying I can't respond to that question by telling you what's happening in my head because
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I apologize. I'm just saying, give me a direct question.
Yeah.
I'll do the very best.
Yeah. So the three precepts that you've just introduced and talked to us about leave things very open. And you've said yourself that it's quite different from the Buddhism that you were exposed to coming from the East. So yeah, what's the question? Yeah, I just wanted, can you say something about how you came to that decision? I know you said the precepts just sort of were there, but I wonder if you can maybe.
Are you talking about the tenets?
The tenets, I'm sorry, yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. When I read them, they don't make any sense to me.
Okay, thank you.
But they're necessary. They're necessary. Direct questions are good if you have them. Goes on.
The word author seems to imply a self. So how could something that sounds like selfish a little bit be benevolent?
Because it's on receive. Receives what arises. It gets its authority from that. If you see me do anything that looks like I'm being an authoritarian or pushy or something like that, I may seem that way. It may seem aggressive to you, but I'm getting it from what I see. I don't know what to do as far as I don't have any plan for anything. Until I meet you, then I know what to do. When I meet him, I know what to do. When I meet her, I know what to do. When I meet her, I know what to do. I don't know how else to say it. I'm not trying to be evasive particularly, but that's as specific as I can be. I don't have a plan. That doesn't mean I'm some kind of liberated being. I don't mean that. I'm just saying I don't have a plan. Plans don't work. They're circular. More?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, right.
Go ahead.
With the title of the talk, Benevolent Authority, are you pointing more towards the teacher figure or that within ourselves?
Yeah, probably a little bit of each, maybe. It's just that somebody got to say something about anything. We have a community here, and we have our ups and downs or our difficulty, but basically everything works pretty well. Even I'm surprised at how well we adapted to the COVID situation. Here we are. No one's wearing masks here because everybody's been isolated together, so to speak, or separate from the rest of the world at this point. So communication, receive, and then cooperation, cooperate with what you're receiving, and then and collaborate if you can. The illusion of separate beings is not that there aren't beings, but the illusion that they're separate from each other is not true, nor are they the same as. Go ahead.
What is permission?
in the sense that I'm saying I teach with your permission, you ask me, you give me, you say, like you say, I want you to be my teacher. I want to be a student of yours, and you would do that. And there's different levels of that, as you know. And if I have people that I've been talking to for 15 or 20 years, I talk to them every now and then. I function with them. However, whatever they bring to me, that's where I meet them at. They come all the way this way and want to live in a monastery and be fully ordained as a monk. I make them beg for it. Did you have to beg? A little bit. You know? But in other words, I want to make sure you're sincere about it, that you know what you're getting into. This isn't for everyone to do. I don't want to convert everybody into this with some kind of idea that I have about getting more and more students. Not a good idea.
I'm thinking of authority in the context of the officer positions. And is there a situational permission that shows up for that authority?
You mean like the ENO, like what your function is right now? Well, there's a form for it, and then it's laid out a certain way, and then of course nothing is predictable. Things are changing all the time. So then it would be up to you to see whether you need to say, yeah, don't do that. No, move this over there, or we'll change your time from this to this, or maybe you can fill in over here for this person since you can't do that. So, you know, you're just operating with it however it shows up. Initially, when this first started, people would be upset if somebody wasn't at the forums that they were required to be at. So they would then wonder if, well, and people would let me know that so-and-so, you know, has not been showing up to forums. So as if there's something wrong with that. As if their observation of the forums and your observation of the forums, your observation of the forums meant you need to comply. And their observation of the forums, they need to figure out a way to get out of it. Still forums, still awareness. Awareness. It's not right and wrong, is always extra. Always there. Nobody's correct. Nobody is incorrect. Go ahead. That was a good question, so don't forget it. Did it slip your mind?
I haven't given up yet.
You're only 20 years old, right?
Working on it. Okay, so in the example with the permission, you said I asked you for permission. It was like a really literal, please help me, my teacher. But within, like at the ENO position, that person might not have directly said, yes, please come in and say something to me. So I'm wondering, what is permission within those relationships?
How's it look to you?
Confusing.
Good place to be. Just stay in the confusion. When I say stay, don't maintain the confusion, but not necessarily trying to find a way to solve that as some kind of an issue that you need to put in the past or get over with. You're welcome. Further questions?
Maria bowing.
Go ahead, Maria. Make it a really easy one, Maria. Question.
How can we be negativity we are and be kind to the others at the same time? Bowing.
How can we be the negativity that we are?
Yes, and be kind to the others at the same time.
That's the only way you can do it. Be the negativity you are, and be kind to others. Be respectful to others. Respond. If negativity arises in you, I'm going to say it very literally, and I don't mean it's as punishment, but you got it coming. I mean, it's your life. Live your life. Don't run away from your life. Be the negativity you're trying to get rid of. So that way, the negativity it's your karma. When I say it's your karma, I'm not blaming you for something you did in the 13th century, but everything is dependently arisen, and it doesn't follow the order that the ego would like it to, as a praise and blame and success and failure and up and down, back and forth. So that's the only way you can do it, because then you are you're being responsible. Shall I say it that way? You're responsible for your negativity. And so therefore you can be kind to others. It's like, it's actually the path of the Bodhisattva is to all praise and blame. All praise goes to others, all blame, I take it. So literally that, you don't literally do that, but you take that kind of attitude. Give me that negativity. I'll take the negativity. I'll take my own negative feelings and wish for happiness for you. It's a relative path until it's not, but it's a relative path until it's not. What did I say? It's a relative path until it's not. So keep walking up the side of the mountain until you fall off the other side. As has been said before, the fall is pretty terrifying until you realize you're not going to hit anything. Go ahead.
Maria Bowing, I'm just asking about more specific situations when I feel that negativity and someone is in front of me, and I'm pretty sure that that person feels my negativity as well. So there is no kindness there.
You don't know that. I've never seen you be negative at all. You're always kind. Always. You're always kind. I don't see any negativity. And I've known you for years.
Thank you.
No question? Go ahead, Junchu.
Another question from Julian. Any thoughts on how to engage children in meditation or what age it is appropriate?
Yeah, leave them alone. Don't train children to meditate. You meditate. You meditate. You sit down and meditate. If you have a child that's watching you meditate, just let them watch you. They're watching you. They don't have any idea what you're doing. Mind your own business. I mean, obviously, if it's your 5-year-old son or daughter or 8-year-old or whatever, of course you would like them to meditate, but respect them, respect their intelligence. Meditation is very hard to do. It's extremely hard. And some people's karma is not aligned with that at this point, either in this lifetime or this particular age. Respect them. Respect means don't meddle with them without permission. As I sometimes say, make them drag it out of you. They see you meditating and meditating and meditating. And your child comes up and said, can I meditate? Well, sure. How do I meditate? Sit there. You mean just sit here? Yes. No techniques. If they ask you, if they get up and leave and they never meditate again, then never mention it to them. Respect them. Meditation is difficult. And some people, their karma, their life, their causes and effects that are rising as their particular emotions and feelings and so on. You need to respect those. So otherwise they can't find their own intelligence. They're always looking to you for something. They need to, as Kobun Roshi said, get your own authority. You can help them when they're very young. Of course, we want to see our kids meditate. But the best way to do that is just let them come to you. And then if they meditate 3 times or 8 times or 15 times and they never meditate again, mind your own business. It's a spiritual path. It's not learning how to play the clarinet. I don't mean to be disrespectful to your question. Actually, I really appreciate that, because I think not only you might need to hear it, but other people might need to hear that you need to really respect other people. Respect their confusion. If you see something that's really crazy or really difficult and you think meditation would help them, mind your own business. They probably already know you meditate. And if they ask you about it, then you're getting a little bit of permission. You could say, yes, I meditate. It's helpful to me. I'm sure you've noticed if you're a meditator, you're never really sure exactly how to tell people how it helps, because as you meditate, you go more and more deeper into the confusion. I'm sure you've noticed. Or maybe not. Maybe you're one of those lucky people. So it's good that you're meditating yourself. And it's good that you have children that can see you meditate and watch you. If they want to join you, fine. It's just like a cat. A cat will come in and sit and watch you, and then they'll sit with you for a while. And then pretty soon they're not interested anymore. They go off and do something else. Final question or not? Either way is good. You have anything? No? Okay, then we'll dedicate the merit. Okay, dedicate the merit. And turn the screen.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Sokuzan Chi Shifu Shison Musa Wokosa the 10 directions of 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna Paramita. O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.